Hey folks, so I wanted to do this video in response to a comment that was posted on my recent video about how the red wave that's expected in November won't save America. And before I start, I want to make it clear, I'm not picking on the person. I understand exactly what they meant. Because I've been there. But the comment was, and I'm not going to quote the whole thing, the individual that left the comment, you know who you are. And this is a response to you, specifically for you, for everybody, but specifically for you. The comment was essentially that creators on YouTube constantly talk about how people need to prepare and protect themselves and get ready, but that we don't have any idea what it's like because a third of the country is struggling to even put food on the table. All right, again, before I go any further, I'm not picking at anybody. I'm not making judgments about anybody either. And I'm going to start off with saying that's not true. That comment, in a way, is a judgment against creators without knowing the financial status of the people that make these videos. A lot of the people that make these prepper videos, some of them have a lot of money. Some of them make a lot of money. Quite a few don't have any money or have very little. Most preppers, point of fact, most preppers that I talk to struggle to make ends meet. They're not what you would consider rich. They're not, a lot of them aren't even what you would consider middle class. Most are what you would be classified as poor, if not below the poverty line. I'm not at the poverty line, I'll admit that, but I am, and I responded to that commenter, I am about as far from being rich as I am from the moon. I'm not loaded with money. I work my butt off to have what I do. And I'm coming at this from a position where I know what it's like. I do, trust me. I really do. You might think I don't because I'm holding up these cans of freeze-dried food, or I'm holding up all these things that cost money. But there was a time when I couldn't afford any of that. And if you can't afford that, I understand. And I sympathize because I know how hard it is. Many times in my life, growing up and even into adulthood, I've been extremely poor, if not well below the poverty line. I've been unemployed at times, living off of handouts and charity from family and friends, from food banks. I've lived in my car. I've lived out in a lean-to in the woods. I've lived in a thrown together shed in the woods. I've lived in a van. So I'm not coming at things from a perspective of I've got money, and you have to have money, and this is what you have to do. If I come off that way, I apologize. But you do need to understand, I'm doing what I can at my level. And anytime I do something, I try to relay that to my viewers so that they can see what I'm doing, and it gives them an idea of what they can do. And you're right. A lot of people don't understand what it's like to be in that position where you have to struggle and fight just to have the simplest food on the table. I remember a time in my childhood when we were so hungry when I was growing up, it was almost unbearable. We would actually take mayonnaise and put it on bread and eat that for dinner. So, trust me, I understand. I'm not rich now by any means. I have what I have, and I'm able to buy what I buy because I have a job that, while it doesn't pay the best, it pays a decent amount. But there's the opportunity for a lot of overtime, and I do work a ridiculous amount of overtime. That overtime, in addition to me making knives to sell on the side and coming up with money in other ways, that's how I'm able to do what I do. Not everybody can do things like that. Not everybody is that fortunate. I understand that as well. But we have to get beyond this concept of this ideology that we get stuck in our heads that I can't do that. I don't have this, I don't have that, so I can't do that. When I was growing up, in those times where we were extremely poor, when we didn't have money, barely had food to eat, and even into my adulthood, when I didn't have money and didn't have food, for a long time I had that same mentality. I can't do that. I don't have the resources to do that. But every time you say that to yourself, you're blinding yourself. You're giving yourself tunnel vision, and you can't see what you are actually capable of doing despite your situation. So when I was growing up, there would be times when we were really, really poor. And we would struggle to have food. We would struggle to pay bills. We would be borrowing money from family and friends. My dad would be killing himself trying to work to make ends meet. But it was just hard. And looking back on what we went through then, through the lens of what I know now, there's so much we could have done that we could have done better. We didn't see that at the time. All we could see is we don't have this, we don't have that. This is all we've got. And we couldn't look at, when you look at your situation from a negative point of view, this is all I've got, this is all I can do. I can't do anything anybody suggests. When you look at things like that, you're closing your mind off to potential and possibility and solutions. Someone once said, our brains are fantastic machines at coming up with solutions to problems. Our minds, our brains are amazing problem solvers if you give them the opportunity. When you say, I can't do this, I can't do that, I don't have, you're shutting down the possibilities. You're closing your mind off to thinking outside the box. And again, this is not to pick on anybody. I really know what it's like to be where you're at. I don't know your specific situation, but just from that one comment, I have a good idea. And it's not easy. It's frightening and it's stressful. But you have to, in order to open your mind up to coming up with solutions to all these problems, you need to start thinking in a different way. And again, this is no insult to you. This is no judgment. I'm not picking on you. I'm trying to help you. If I need to do something and I think I can't do it this way, I can't do it that way because I don't have this, what you need to start doing is, okay, this is what needs to be done. What do I have that I can use to make it work? what are some ways that I can improvise, adapt? Again, I don't know your situation. You might be really poor, living in a city, and some of what I'm about to tell you probably won't help you. If you're out in the country, you'll have a little bit more freedom, or if you're at least in a suburban area, you might be able to implement some of these ideas. Money is really restrictive. Everything we do revolves around how much money we have, because everything costs. I understand that as well. And for somebody that's literally pinching pennies, just trying to put one meal on the table, when somebody holds up a can of butter powder or freeze-dried vegetables, that can seem insulting and so far out of reach. But stop looking at what others are doing as a level of, this is where you have what you have to do, this is how you have to do it. Look at it like, what can I gather from this to help me? People talk about food dehydrating all the time. That's one of my first tips for you. And people invariably go to, well, I don't have a food dehydrator. Well, my answer to that is, do you have an oven? You have the sun too. If you have an oven, you can dehydrate food. If you have a yard, you can dehydrate food because you've got the sun. To dehydrate food in an oven, all you need to do, get you a cookie sheet, slice up your vegetables or whatever, spread them out on the cookie sheet, turn your oven on low. There's different temperatures. You can look this information up online. Different temperatures and different lengths of time for each food item and how thick it's cut. But slice up some vegetables or some fruits. Spread it out on a cookie sheet, space in between. Stick it in the oven maybe around 150 to 200 degrees. You'll want the door to the oven partially open and just let it run for a few hours. Don't leave it unattended, but let it run for a few hours. You want that food to get so dry in the oven that when you bend it, it snaps in half. You've dehydrated food if you can do that. You can do it with fruits, vegetables, you can even do it with meat. Meat has to be cut really, really thin, and the less fat in it, the better. Put that stuff in a vacuum sealed bag. Okay, you don't have a vacuum sealer, you don't have the bags, you can't afford to get them. That's fine, I understand that. Get you some Ziploc bags. Put that in it and get you some mason jars if you can afford them. Put them in that. Try to get as much air out as possible. But even with air in the bag or in the jar, it'll still last a while. When you're shopping, look for sales. I know you're probably in one of these positions where you're struggling hard enough that you already don't buy name brand items because they're more expensive. So you're buying the cheapest store-bought variety you can get. Sometimes that helps you, sometimes it doesn't. And here's why. A lot of times you can go into the store and if you'll look at the prices, a lot of times you'll have the price of the item here, and off to the side it'll tell you per ounce. If it doesn't, use the calculator on your phone or take a little calculator with you. You take the price of the item, divide it by the number of ounces. That gives you how much you're spending per ounce. Do that to all the items. Pick the one that is cheapest per ounce. That might be the name brand. It might be the store brand. I've seen times where the store brand was actually more expensive than the name brand. Usually it's the other way around, but I've seen it where the name brands are actually cheaper. You want to pay attention to exactly what you're spending on your food. Dried beans are your friend. Rice is your friend. Pasta is your friend. It's not the healthiest food. And if you have allergies to some of these items, I understand that. You're going to have to look at ways you can work around that. Learn to cook from scratch using flour, cornmeal, and things like that. Don't buy boxed mixes. Again, you might already know how to do that, and you might already be doing that. If so, good for you. If not, when you buy a boxed item, you'll pay more per ounce for all the different ingredients than you would if you bought like a bag of flour and a few seasonings. The flour and the seasonings might cost more up front, but they'll last you longer than one box meal product. You have to look at the cheapest way to do things. When you buy vegetables, if you can't afford to go buy seeds, when you buy vegetables, say a tomato, slice open that tomato, take a few of the seeds out. You can put them in a little jar or a glass and add some water, cover it with a piece of cloth and a rubber band. You want to stir it up really good and let them ferment. Stir them up every about once a day maybe. Do that for a few days. Open it up, skim all that crap off the top of it, strain the water out, put some fresh water in, do it again. Once you get that done, you can dry the seeds. Then you've got free seeds from what you got at the store. Now, depending on what type of tomato you bought, you might get a tomato just when you plant them and grow them. You might get a tomato exactly like what you bought, or it might be something a little different. Look for sales in the stores on vegetable seeds. If you can, and you have a place to do it, plant food everywhere. If you've only got like a 10-foot by 10-foot backyard or patio, see if you can find a few pots. You don't necessarily have to buy them. You can sometimes find them for free. You might be able to, go to Facebook Marketplace, for example. You might be able to find some there really cheap. If you can't afford that, talk to people you know. Ask them if they buy any plants. If they buy any plants, ask them if you can have the pots that they come in. See if you can find some soil. If you can buy it. If not, you'll have to come up with a solution to that. You can buy a bag of plain soil for a couple of dollars at the hardware store or at Lowe's or Home Depot. If you know somebody with a little bit of land, ask them if you can go dig up a little bit of soil. See if you can find a 5-gallon bucket or find a spot in your backyard and try to start composting to build up a good compost supply to enrich that soil that you just got. Plant you some vegetables. You're not going to be able to sustain yourself 100% off of those vegetables, but it will supplement everything you do. It will help stretch your food. Every little thing you do adds up. I know it's hard as hell, excuse my language, I know it's hard to put food back when you're already struggling just to eat. But when you go to the store and you look at a can of hash and say it's corned beef hash and say it's $2.28 and you want to get a can, and then you look beside it and there's a generic store brand that's $1.68, you might be able to get 2 cans of the generic for what 1 can of the name brand might cost you. Look for options like that. There are places where you can go to get discount food. We have a couple in my town. They basically buy up a bunch of overstock and dented cans from grocery stores, and they sell them at almost 50% off. Now, again, they're dented, which is not necessarily a good thing, but in your situation, you can't afford to be choosy. Just make sure that they're not bulging and that they're still within date. Again, expiration dates on canned goods aren't necessarily the rule of law. It's just a guideline to protect, mainly to protect retailers and manufacturers. At the same time, though, if the can has been dented or otherwise compromised, that seal on the food might be compromised, so then you need to look a little bit closer at the expiration date. But yeah, we have stores here, and you might have one in your town, where you can buy dented canned goods like that, like 50% off. Some grocery stores actually have bargain buggies inside the store where they'll take discontinued items or dented cans or whatever. They'll throw them in that buggy for 50 to 60% off at times. Take advantage of those anytime you see them. Food banks. I'm not a big fan of food banks. And now hold on, I'm not a big fan of food banks in that I don't like going to them myself. But that's a pride issue for me. I don't like asking for help because there are other people that need that food more than me. So if there's any way I can get by, even if I have to scrounge and scrimp and save and claw to get food to get me by till my next payday, I won't go to a food bank, because I know there are hundreds of other people in my area that need it far worse than I do. But if you're in that situation, don't be ashamed to go to a food bank. Go to a food bank, get a little extra food. There's nothing wrong with it. That's what they're there for. You might not be religious, and if so, that's okay. There's churches that hand out food. Some of them will make you sit through a prayer or want to talk to you for a little bit before they donate you food. What I would advise, if you're that hard up for food, bite your tongue, swallow your pride, and if that's what they require, sit through it. If that's what it takes to get food for yourself and your family. It's a small price to pay to be able to eat. Whenever you have the opportunity to make extra money, do it. And whenever you do have that extra money, spend it very wisely, because it's that much harder for you to come by than it is others. So you have to be even more careful how you spend it. Food stamps. If you have to be on food stamps, there's nothing wrong with that. I don't judge people for being on food stamps. If you have to have EBT, you do what you got to do. You do what you have to feed your family. And then that will give you a little bit more to supplement what you have. And I've known people that get food stamps and still go to the food bank. There's nothing wrong with that. Especially in these days where food costs on certain items have gone up 25 to 30%. There's a pride issue with people not wanting to ask for help. But if you are having that much of a hard time, there's nothing wrong with asking for help. Especially from your family and friends. Now, some people don't have anybody they can go to. And for that, I feel sorry for them. I can sympathize. And they're left on their own to deal with that. If you have the ability and the option, look into hunting and foraging. There's a place over here that I like to go to, a boat ramp where we access the river. There are a bunch of blackberries that grow down there sometimes. They've kind of thinned out over the past couple of years. Yeah, it's by the highway and by the river and the boat ramp and everything, but I'm not above going down there and picking a bunch of those blackberries. And then I'll bring them back home and I'll wash them off really, really good. And I'll put them in the freezer. And they can be used for jellies. They can be used for pies, cobblers. I'll even mix them in with pancakes when I'm making pancakes. Make some blackberry pancakes. If you don't have pots for growing in, you have room to plant, but you don't have pots to grow in, look for places where you can get free pallets. You can tear those pallets apart, pull the nails out of them, and use that wood to build raised beds. Now, that wood's not going to last long. I'm going to tell you that right now. Don't be overly concerned about chemicals leaching into your food, because it's going to be a negligible amount of anything depending on where you get the pallets from. Now, if they're soaked in oil, don't do it. Obviously, be smart about that, but look for free scrap wood to build things out of. The idea is to look for solutions. Always ask yourself, I need this. How can I get it? Or how can I improvise it? How can I do this? How can I do that? You start asking yourself these questions, and you ask yourself all the time, every day, ask yourself these questions. It turns a switch on up here where it helps you automatically start problem solving. And it'll get easier and easier, and you'll think of things as you go along that you normally wouldn't have. All these YouTube creators that make things look so easy, they do this, they do that, and they do all kinds of stuff. Watch them anyway. Even if you don't have what they do, if you don't have the tools, if you don't have the supplies, if you don't have the land that they do, watch them anyway. You never know when something they might say or something they might do might give you an idea on how you can improve your situation. It's all a matter of how you look at your situation. And again, I don't know your personal situation. I gather from your comment, it's really hard. I understand that. Trust me, I've been there before, so don't think I haven't. Me and my father slapped together a 10 by 10 shack / shed in the woods one time, mainly off of items that we salvaged and scrounged. And we lived in it, out in the woods. I've lived in a lean-to. I've been there. I know what it's like. I know how hard it is. And trust me when I say I'm not condescending. I'm not trying to be condescending. I'm not trying to put you down. A lot of people, when they get in these situations, they get so caught up on, I can't do this, or I don't have this to do what I need. There is always a way to improve your situation. There's always a way to get certain things done. It might not be the most ideal way, it might not be the best way, or the easiest way, but there's always a way to do something. If you don't have a working oven, for example, to dehydrate food, get you a couple of screens or some screen wire and some wood. Slap together 2 frames that you can put together. Put sliced up vegetables between them. Clamp it together. Stick it out in the sun where it'll dry them. You don't have that? Take a needle and some thread. Tie a stick on one end of the thread and thread those slices onto that thread and hang it up in the sun and let it dry that way. There's always a way to do something. Again, it might not be the ideal or even the preferred way. It might not be even the easiest way. but there's always a way. You're only limited up here if you allow yourself to be. If you unlock this potential here, everything else becomes a lot easier. You'll find that once you start asking yourself these questions and thinking in this way, you'll find that you start noticing more free items here and there. You'll start noticing things on sale that you didn't notice before. People giving away certain things. A chance to do this. A way to do that. It adds up. And you'll start noticing things more. And that will be so much more beneficial for you. So, my advice to you, quit thinking in terms of I can't and I don't, and think of how can I and how do I. I know it may seem foolish, but those are two of your biggest assets, thinking in that way. And I understand that a lot of creators get on here and we hold up all these fancy things and we say, you need to buy this, you need to buy that. And I know it can get frustrating. Don't get upset, don't get frustrated. Because we're doing that. Think of how you can take that knowledge and that wisdom and apply it to your situation. And if you have any questions, ask. There's forums out there where people talk about how to do things for free or really cheap. If you're subscribe to a YouTube channel, ask people how you can do something if you can't afford to buy this or do that. People will help you. People will help you and help give you ideas a lot faster than you think. Be open to that. And I hope you can find some way to do what you need to prep and get ready. And just do the best you can. And don't get so hung up on what everybody tells you you have to do. You're doing what you can. That's all that matters. If I'm putting up 15 pallets of freeze-dried food, doesn't mean you have to. You do what you can do and be happy with that. Be proud of that. Anyway, that's all I've got. I just wanted to take a minute and it turned out to be more than a minute. I just wanted to take some time and respond to that comment. Now, I responded in the comment section, but I wanted to go a little bit more in depth in a video because I thought it was a good subject. I thought it was something really important that needed to be touched on, something that a lot of creators don't stop to consider. And admittedly, even though I've been in that situation, I haven't really touched on it myself. So thank you for that comment. Best of luck to you. Don't get frustrated. Don't give up. Keep trying. And I hope things work out for you. There are solutions there, and I hope you can find them. With that, that's all I've got. I appreciate you guys watching. Like, subscribe. And I'll catch you later, guys. Until next time.